Reading passage number 1. Question 1. Which of the facts do you find the most interesting? I find it interesting that the Vikings believed the world would end in a battle called Ragnarok. Well, for one, because that's not how it happened. And for two, why did they think the earth would submerge? What, did the gods get so hot the ice caps melted? And secondly, why would it re-emerge? It doesn't make any sense. Anyways, question 2, reading passage number 1. According to the Viking mythology, how was the earth created? The earth was created by, it was created supposedly by Odin and his brothers killing a giant, and then they built the world out of that giant. But once again, I don't know how they did that. Giants aren't necessarily round. Number 3, reading passage number 1. How did the Vikings believe the world would end? And I've talked about this before. The Vikings believed the world would end in a battle called Ragnarok, in which gods would die and like as I discussed before, the world would submerge. I still think that's bullshit. And now the facts that can be found in the reading passage that you provided us. The first fact that can be found is, that somehow the Vikings knew that there were 9 planets, but they called them worlds. But, I mean, obviously we no longer count Pluto, but they weren't that smart back then. Second fact is that they did sacrifice horses and dogs, and I see you asked us to prove these facts, and just Google them. I know these are real. Second reading passage. Question 1. According to the provided reading passage, why were Vikings resistant to the change of Christianity? Well, Vikings were hesitant to switch to Christianity, so old gods treated them just fine. See, there was a god correlated to each problem you had. Wife's with another man? Pray to Freya. It's probably the wrong one. I don't think I got the name right. I didn't rehearse this. Question 2, reading passage 2. What was one of the main factors that caused the switch to Christianity? Well, when the kings were forced to convert to Christianity, all the king's people, all the king's men, I'm not going to say it, all the king's people and all the king's men, well, they were forced to convert to Christianity too, because, well, mixed religions, when they're living together, that doesn't end up well. Question 3, reading package 2. What are a few ways the Vikings honored their old gods? Well, Vikings honored their gods by prayer, and every once in a while the gods were treated with a horse, or, maybe a slave that ran away. Question 4, reading passage 2. If you were a Viking living in this time, would you continue worshipping the old gods? Why or why not? Well, I'll tell you, if I was a Viking living in that time, I would reject modernity and return to tradition. Why? Because Christians are boring. That's all there is to it. Norse mythology is way more interesting. Reading passage 3 now. Question 1. What were Viking burials like before Christianity? Well, once Christianity was introduced, the Christians had to do what they do best, and they managed to make the best part of life, which is death, boring. Before that, people were buried with their most prized possessions, and anything they wanted to take to the trip to the afterlife. Question 2, reading passage 3. What was the greatest burial traditions the Vikings had, and why was it so important? Well, kings, queens, and earls were buried in full-sized ships, along with money, food, and freshly killed animals. This prepared them for the trip to the afterlife. Just all they needed. Question 3, reading passage 3. This is the last one. What other ancient civilization buried their dead with their possessions? Now, they didn't necessarily bury them, but ancient Egyptians, they put their nobles in great tombs. Gotta check them out. With lots of riches and all kinds of shiny things. I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. Get out of here.